Senhoras e senhores, bom dia. A partir deste momento, estamos iniciando os trabalhos do 17º Seminário Nacional de Bibliotecas Universitárias, uma realização da Universidade Federal do Rio Grande do Sul com a Comissão Brasileira de Bibliotecas Universitárias. Solicitamos a todos, por gentileza, que desliguem seus aparelhos celulares ou coloquem no modo silencioso durante as atividades do seminário. Este evento tem como tema central a Biblioteca Universitária como laboratório na sociedade de informação. Desde 1978, o SNBU vem promovendo o encontro e estreitando laços entre os profissionais que atuam nas bibliotecas universitárias brasileiras, alcançando um nível de maturidade que o converteu no maior e mais importante evento na área da ciência da informação no campo acadêmico. O objetivo do seminário é o de refletir sobre a biblioteca universitária como laboratório de ensino, voltado para o desenvolvimento de competências informacionais e de pesquisa, atuante na identificação e no acesso às informações necessárias para a formação profissional e o avanço do conhecimento técnico e científico. Queremos, desde já, fazer um agradecimento especial a todos os patrocinadores do seminário. Patrocínio Ouro, DotLib, Elsevier, Systems Link International. Patrocínio Prata, Bicateca Soluções para a Educação, Cengage Learning. Ebisco, Minha Biblioteca. Patrocínio Bronze, Springer, Vértice Books. Também agradecemos aos nossos apoiadores, CAPES, CNPq, FAPERGS, Secretaria de Cultura de Gramado e Convention Bureau Gramado Canela. Iniciamos este dia de trabalhos com o eixo temático Gestão da Biblioteca Universitária. Teremos agora a conferência com o tema Avaliação de Sistemas de Descobertas. É com muito prazer que convidamos para compor o palco, como coordenadora desta atividade, senhora Ana Gabriela Clipes Ferreira, da Universidade Federal do Rio Grande do Sul. Como relatora da atividade, a senhora Valéria Maria Soledade de Almeida, da Universidade Federal de Goiás. E o nosso conferencista, senhor Ido Pellet, de Israel. Ido Pellet é bacharel em Ciências da Computação e da Comunicação pela Universidade de Tel Aviv, Israel. Cursou também o MBA na Universidade Hebraica de Jerusalém. Atualmente ocupa o cargo de gerente de produto Descoberta na Ex Libris, empresa mundial de soluções para a automação de bibliotecas. Suas responsabilidades incluem conceber planos e estratégias de desenvolvimento de sistemas de descoberta, atuando como interface entre clientes, desenvolvedores e pessoal de vendas. Com a palavra, a senhora Ana Gabriela Clipes Ferreira. Bom dia.
Bom dia, obrigada. Bom dia, senhoras e senhores. Então, vamos dar início às atividades de hoje do 17º SNBU, Seminário Nacional de Bibliotecas Universitárias. Um cumprimento especial para nossos irmãos gaúchos pelo nosso 20 de setembro e reforçando, agradecendo a todo o pessoal de todo o Brasil e fora do Brasil que está prestigiando o nosso evento. O tema da palestra de hoje é a avaliação de sistemas de descoberta com o professor Ido Pellet, já apresentado. E informamos que a apresentação terá duração de 1 hora e após teremos 10 minutos para as perguntas. As perguntas poderão ser feitas por escrito ou através dos microfones que estarão disponíveis com as recepcionistas. Perguntas em português ou inglês. Por favor, então, professor Ido Pellet, com a palavra.
Hi, Good morning, everyone. I'd like to first thank the organizing committee for inviting me to speak here in this session today. It's sort of funny because I'm speaking to this, but most of the audience is here, so I don't think this is adjustable, but I'll try and do my best to address everyone. My presentation today is about discovery systems, and I'd like to focus my presentation on sort of providing knowledge on how it's best to evaluate discovery solutions. I'll first introduce what discovery really is, and then I'll go forward and describe some of the key criteria when selecting such a discovery solution. Moreover, I'd like to thank every one of you for joining in this morning. I know it's a great weather outside. I know we had the game last night, but you were still able to wake up in the morning and join me, so thank you for that. And with no further ado, I'd like to begin. Okay, so everything's working properly. I'd like to start with some introduction question. The first one is, how can we deliver the most relevant content to our users? And I think this is a key question. As librarians, we want to provide knowledge to our users. In order to do so, we must always provide them with the best tool for finding, but also for reaching and delivery of materials. So bear that in mind on how can we best make that transition into allowing better discovery of materials. The second question I'd like to ask was, how can we overcome this information overload or data deluge, as some say? We have a lot of paper materials, we have a lot more electronic subscribed content, and we have quite a few digital items. So we have a lot of information, millions and maybe tens or hundreds of millions of records. And out of those, we need to identify how can we best make sure that the user actually receives what they were looking for. And it's not a simple task. And I think the third one is, how can we make sure that, how can we make sure that items are not just discovered, but are actually being used? And I think in many cases, we look at things and we think of them as a search portal, even when you take, for example, Google, Bing, or Amazon. The goal of these search engines is not to search things, is to find and use. And this is what we need to do also for library materials. It's not just about making sure that we can find them, it's also about making sure that they can be used by the users. So these are my three opening questions, if you'd like. And I believe that discovery solutions are the answer to these questions. And I want to focus more and explain why I believe this is exactly the answer. We have a problem today, or at least I have or all of us have a problem. I have a lot of problems, but this is the specific one I'd like to talk about today. We have different things. There are many types of materials. We have digital, we have paper, we have electronic, we have many types of data sources as well coming. And for each one of them, there is a different interface. If you want your paper material or your library materials, you go into the OPAC, for example. If you want your digital materials, you go into a digital repository. If you want electronic materials, you can go to any of the many data providers. And this leads to some sort of, I would say, maybe frustration with the users, because users today, and I can claim to be one of them, are pretty lazy. Let's be honest about it. We want to find things easy, in a simple way. So we have different expectations. And unfortunately, the features and the tools which currently most libraries use don't meet the expectations. Our expectations are pretty simple, and I tried to list them over there. One of them is make sure that the interface is simple to use, that I will not need any explanations. How many of you have an iPhone or an Android or some sort of an tablet? I see some hands up there. I did not, you know, the instruction page to this is about 2 pages, which means everything should be simple to use. If it's not simple to use, it will not be used. And that's a problem. More than that, we need to make sure that things working fast. No one can wait today for things, you know, I remember when I started to use the internet, I would wait for a 2 megabyte file to be downloaded. It would take about 10 minutes. Today, this is not acceptable. We expect things to be fast. If not, we will find an alternative. We'll find a different way of getting that information. So it has to be simple, it has to be fast, and more important, it has to be relevant materials. If I would go into any search engine, or if I would go to the library and I would search for something, and I would find a lot of results, maybe tens or hundreds or millions of results, but they were not relevant to me, I would still go somewhere else. And I think this is the problem. We have expectations, and today we need to sort of transition the library world to meet those expectations. I went online and I tried to focus on these expectations. And they can be easily divided into 3 main categories. One of them, or the first one, is to make sure that the system is usable. So make sure again that it's simple to use, it's obvious what you should do, how you should do it. That's number one. The second is that it's useful. It provides relevant information. Again, making sure that I can perform the different tasks. If I'm searching for a book, I want to find a book. I want to find where the book is on the shelf. If I'm searching for an online article, I want to find the article. I want to be able to get to the full text of the article. And this is what useful is, being able to perform these tasks. And more than that, it has to be desirable. I'm not, to be honest, I'm not as familiar with the situation in libraries in Brazil, but I do know that in North America and in Europe, they struggle very much with Google Scholar because people are used to the Google interface. So a lot of the students, they go to Google Scholar and they search materials there. Why? Because they're used to it and because it does the job fairly well. So we have to make sure that beyond just, you know, accomplishing the task, that the users will enjoy the interface. The users will enjoy the discovery solution, so they will want to come back. They will recommend it to other people. And this is not a simple task, but it has to be done. If I take us on a short journey in history to talk about where we started. So we started about, you know, this goes only 3 years ago. We really started to provide discovery solution. A single interface for all the things that the library has. And by that, I mean digital, electronic, and paper. Everything that you want, you can put in a single interface for the user to find. And that started, and I give here, for those of you who are not familiar with Marshall Breeding, he used to work for Vanderbilt University up to a few months ago. And he gave a simple breakdown of what's the basic discovery solution, what should it have. And if you see, it's a bit 2009, also in terms of the context. But first of all, it has to be fast. It has to be one interface, a single unified interface for everything. It has to have facets. Facets are those, and I'll show you in a screenshot later, facets are those post-search filtering that users can use. Like, for example, when I shop in Amazon, I can find on the left side of the screen, you know, supplies, kitchenware, books, and things like that. So being able to use that in order to filter my results. It has to have suggestions. I'm not, you know, English is not my mother tongue, as I was introduced earlier. I come from Israel. I learned English like the rest of us here. I make mistakes, especially when I write, and especially when I write fast. and I need to make sure that the system I use will understand that I'm not always perfect, so it will know to suggest things to me. In addition, RSS feed. I think RSS feed was the beginning, sort of the, in the direction of sharing information. So when you see here RSS, again, it's 2009, RSS was the big thing 3 years ago. I think today we have some more modern ways of sharing information, and I'll discuss this later. And also we have to make sure that the content the library has is being covered by the discovery solution. So there are no missing parts. Everything should be there, because if everything is not there, users will again start going somewhere else. We want to make sure they always come back to their discovery solution. So these were the basic criteria. I give you an example of the brief results page of one of the discovery tools, because in this page I can find all the relevant things that we just discussed. Number one, and I hope everyone can read, oh, I see you have some screens there in the back, so good. It has a single search box. It's not sophisticated, it's not very complicated. You go and you search. You don't need to define before you search if you're searching for an article, if you're searching for a book, if you're searching for a journal. You simply search. And this is what users expect today. They want to search. They don't care about the other things, in most cases, I would say. Also, you can find, as I mentioned on the left side, the facets, the options to post-filter the results. So I found something, in this case, though, it's a small number of results, 300 and something results. But in other cases, you would see millions of results that match that criteria. And in this case, I can use the facets to, again, filter them to something that is more relevant to me. You can also find the different, what I call, fulfillment option or delivery options. It's one thing, again, to search for something. It's another thing to actually deliver it to your users. So you have these delivery options. And also, more important, on the top right side is the option to sign in and to have your own personal space. Because this, and I will talk about this later, this will make users come back to your discovery solution. So this is the basics, I would say, of discovery. Single search box, facets, easy way to navigate between things, an easy way to retrieve information. What makes, let's take it now to the next stage. 2009, we had sort of the basics. Now users evolved. 3 years is a very long time in today's world. Let's see what advanced discovery is. And I'd like to focus on 3 main components for advanced discovery. The first one is relevant result. What do I mean by that? How many of you click on the next page in Google? Not a lot of people. Why? Because you simply get the results on the first page at the top of the screen. Okay? And this is what users expect today. They expect to get the relevant result at the top. And every paper that you read and every statistic that you find will also confirm that. Not a lot of people even scroll to the end of the page, not to mention next page. So we have to make sure that whatever we're delivering is always at the top of the result page. Otherwise, people will go somewhere else, and we want to make sure they come to the library interface. About 50% of all searches in the library world are for known items. What does that mean? It means I already know what I'm looking for. I come and I know I need the book. I just need to find where the book is. Or I need the article. I simply want you to get me to that place. With the more basic discovery solution, it was very hard to do the relevance ranking. And I give the example, I'm a huge history fan. I love The Prince by Machiavelli, which I think is probably being taught everywhere in the world, almost in any class you can find. So when I searched for The Prince, I was expecting to find The Prince by Machiavelli as the #1 result. If I won't find it, what do I do now? Go to the next page? No, I'll probably find it in other places. You can also find in other basic discovery solutions the same. In the more advanced solutions, we already know how to identify a known item match, meaning don't guess. See if you find the exact term in the title or somewhere in the metadata or in the full text. Give it the right calculation. Let the search engine behind the discovery understand this is a known item and deliver it as the #1 result. And you can see in this case, like again, searching for The Prince, the Machiavelli book is presented as the #1 result. Very important. Now, how can we create relevancy ranking? How can we decide something is more relevant than the other? There are 3 main components as well. Well, I sometimes like the word 3, as you can see. There are 3 main components to this case. The first one is the query, the search term. If I was searching for something, I expect to find it. So we know I was searching for The Prince. In that example, I expect The Prince to be found in the title, in the full text, in the abstract, in the metadata, simply somewhere, because it has to have some sort of a match. The more hits, for example, title is a bit more important than somewhere in the full text. So if I find the exact term in the title, I know, okay, good, I have an exact match. If I find it somewhere in the full text of the article, I can say, okay, it might be relevant, but a bit less relevant. So this is about the query itself and about the search. The second component would be the items, the ranking of the records themselves. The more information we have, for example, peer review is a great indication because we know peer-reviewed articles are being used 3rd more than all the others. So it's a great way for us to say, okay, this might be a more important article than others. We also know some more about the journals which they come from, and we can say this journal might be more relevant than in other cases. So we have these 2 criteria. But I think the third one, which is information about the user, might prove to be the most useful. We're not the same. I can say that I think Brazil, I'm always amazed when I come to Brazil. Anyone can be a Brazilian. And, you can be white, you can be tall, short, anything. You have the most diverse nation in the world, I think. So everyone is definitely not the same. And we need to make sure that when we return the results, we also get some information about the user. The more we know about the user, the better we can provide relevant result. Let me give you an example from my life. I live in Boston, in the US. And when I start typing in Google, I type curry. Curry, we all know from Indian cuisine. But Google already provides me the result with Curry House. What is Curry House? It's a restaurant next to me. So Google knows where I am, and it also keeps track about what I like to eat. So instead of offering me the Wikipedia entry for curry, so I would learn more about the spice itself, it offers me a restaurant. It just comes to show how personal information can be useful. And it can be the same in the library world, and I'd like to show you exactly how. I think I actually just said that verbally, but definitely not everyone is the same. And also in the library world, different people have different needs. If I study computer science, I'll be more interested in computer science materials than in biology. And if I'm a researcher, I'll be more interested in research articles than I will be interested in books, general books, or maybe reference entries like records from Britannica or Wikipedia. So different people have different needs. we take everything and we combine it, the more information we have, again, about the query, the search term, about the records themselves, and about the user, the best we can fit the results. Let's see an example. Okay, in this case, I search for brain damage, not the most positive search term, but a relevant one in terms of research. I haven't defined any information. I didn't identify myself, and I can see I receive an interesting mix of results. In the more advanced discovery solutions, it's important to have a way for the user to contribute information. Unlike search engine, commercial search engines such as Google, Bing, or Amazon, I don't think the library is entitled to collect information about the user. It's very important that any information about users will be volunteered by the user. So we don't act behind their back or something like that, but we voluntarily ask for information. If they would like, they can participate. If not, they can choose not to. But it's important we don't do anything without their consent. In this case, I give the option of choosing your degree, and you can see at the top side, and also choose your discipline. When we know this, now in this case I chose psychology. When we understand what the user is studying, we can actually fit the result a bit better. For example, the same search term, and you can see now that at the top of the result set, I can find psychology-related articles. Okay? So I use the information about the user to bring more relevant information to them. I give the same example with nursing. So in this case, I changed my degree. I went back to the screen where I can define my preferences, and I changed to nursing. And you can see that now I have nursing-related results at the top of my result set. What you can also witness, and I'll scroll back to the previous one and back, the number of results has not changed. And this is important. I identified myself as someone who studies either psychology or nursing, but it doesn't mean that I only search for things in that area. I sometimes might be doing interdisciplinary work, things outside of my scope. I need to make sure that I get all the results. I can still use the facets on the left side to get to the other relevant results. Okay, so it's important to make sure that we don't limit, we don't, remove results, we simply change the order. So you can still get to everything in your discovery tools. Now, if you go to the more basic discovery solutions, and if we take back a few years or even some of the discovery solutions out there, some of them still don't offer the user customization. And it really has a long impact on creating or searching for something that has no context, because we don't know what the user is really searching for. We can base our estimates on, again, the query or the metadata, but we really have less information. And I give you some examples here of just what happens when you search for, again, the same example, but you haven't identified yourself. It's sort of a weird mix of results without actually getting into what the user is actually expecting to receive. What you also find is that in many cases, when you search for something that is a very specific topic, ancient DNA repair, it's very important that we provide the most relevant results also in terms of the context, not just provide very hardcore, deep into the research result, but also things that are actually usable by the user. In this case here, I have a full text article when I search for ancient DNA, which is nice. Also important for users is the ability to find what they're looking for. And I think this is something very important in the way people are using today's systems. For example, I only log into a system, I only identify myself when I have to, when I must. And in this case, we can see with some of the more basic discovery solutions that you simply don't get a lot of results unless you sign in. And we know it's very problematic. So it's very important to make sure that the user can get to all the results. And they don't just tell him, you have to log in this case, to find relevant result. I want the result, I want to be able to make my decisions and then find things. I don't want to be forced to log in and identify myself. First tell me what you have, and then if I decide you have something good, I'll let you know who I am. It's sort of negotiation. Also, it's important that we find relevant items that are grouped together. We can see in this example that for this specific item, I have more than one version of this book. In this case, I have 6 versions. Now, why is it so important for an advanced discovery solution to group everything under a single record? It's important because it gives more room for other results to be presented. Let's just think of an example. And I know that the University of Oxford in England, they have, again, my favorite example, The Prince by Machiavelli. They have 120 versions of that book. If I didn't group everything under a single record, I would have to go through 13 pages to find something else. Trust me, I don't think there is ever a user who actually went to the 14th page. I would give up after the second or third page, probably. So it's very important that we take the same versions of a book and group them under a single record. We simply provide the user with more relevant information at the top of the result set. So this is a key criteria in my view. One of the interesting things of advanced discovery is not just the ability to provide what the user was searching for. We have a term in English which I just learned a few months ago, which is called serendipity. Serendipity is happy accident. What is happy accident? I was searching for something and boom, I found something I wasn't expecting, but I'm happy. And I think recommendations is something like that. Again, I do my shopping, I do a lot of them online. And when I go to Amazon, Amazon already knows who I am, of course, and they tell me, if you like this, you might also be interested in these. And this is very interesting. And in advanced discovery, we want to have the same, because first of all, the user, again, is expecting to find this. So we want to provide recommendations on articles, but it's very important that the recommendations will not just be based on matching metadata. Matching of recommendation should be based on usage. I want to know if someone actually read these 2 articles at the same time or one after the other, because that really tells me they are connected. So to take all this information and create relevant information and relevant recommendation is something huge. And I know that a lot of the researchers like it because of 2 main reasons. One, a lazy student woke up at 8 o'clock in the morning and they have a paper to submit at 10 o'clock in the morning. They find one interesting article and then they can find relevant recommended articles. I'm not saying it's okay, I'm not saying it is good, but I'm saying this is reality. And if we provide him such a tool, he would be ecstatic, he would be thrilled. He would always come back to your discovery of layer. to your discovery solution. This is one. The second is the more advanced, the researcher. He already knows everything. He searches for something, but in the recommendations, because they're based on usage from the entire world, he can now find different search terms. I was searching, for example, for Twitter in the libraries, okay? And then in the recommendation, I found a lot of things that had the word social media or mobile. So, I work and I say, this is relevant. The articles themselves, I less care about them. But it now, I had that happy accident. I now have 2 more search terms that I can use to find relevant materials. This is why I very much like when advanced discovery solutions offer recommendations. And you have it enlarged. The second part, which I think advanced discovery solutions should focus on, is the library-driven decision. And by that I mean providing you with the ability to define how things will be managed. One size fits all doesn't work. We have, I assume, libraries of different kind here, big, small, topic or discipline oriented. We need to make sure that you can decide what is best for the system to display. The more advanced discovery solution really provide you with the options to customize the search engine. These may be advanced features that many of you will say, let's forget about it. Let's not deal with them. Let's use the default, which is perfectly fine. But you need to know that if you need to do changes, they will be available. That, for example, in many of the mega indexes we have, there are about hundreds of millions of articles. And we want to make sure that local materials will be presented as well. Because if we take 100 millions of articles versus local content, it will be overwhelmed. Local material will never get displayed. But we know it is important for the users. So we have to make sure that the library can actually control the way things will be blended into a single result set. And in here I give the example of such a solution that does enable saying, I have this mega index which has a lot of journal articles in them. I have my local materials. I want to make sure that whatever the user is searching, at least 3 or 4 results from my local materials will be presented because I know they are relevant. I give the example here of to have and have not, and why these things are so important. To have and have not, for those of you who are not in the search engine business, this is one of the most difficult search terms in the world. Why? It doesn't have a real word. All the words in here are to, have, and have not. None of them, they're all words that usually describe other words. So a lot of time, the search engine will ignore them because it's actually looking for the more interesting words. And with basic discovery solution, I was looking, of course, for the Hemingway book, Ernest Hemingway, To Have and Have Not. With the basic one, first of all, you see I only get the journal articles, so I don't get local materials at the top of the result set. It's very concerning to me. I scroll to the bottom, I go to the second page, and I scroll on to the third page, and finally, at the fourth page, at the bottom, or somewhere in the fourth page, I actually find the Ernest Hemingway book. This is very concerning because not a lot of users would go and take the trouble to scroll all the way to the fourth page. I need to make sure that library materials are available at the top of my result set. I brought an example of a search engine that does these things, and you can see here the great blending of local materials and resource and general journal articles. First of all, the Hemingway book is presented at #1. I'm very relieved I can find my book. But also, if I'm interested, I can find additional materials about the item itself. I can find the video, I can find an article that discussed maybe the book. So it's very important that I have a nice mixture of items and not just one specific resource type. Going forward, one of the things we also want to provide with advanced discovery is the option to have a single interface. Users like me get frustrated when they have to go from one interface to the other, because I'm already familiar with your colors, with the way the interface works. Now I must move to the other. This is really difficult. So with some of the more advanced discovery solutions, they enable to do the OPAC functionality, some of the ILS functionality already within their interface. So the user doesn't have to be familiar with other interfaces in addition. And this is something huge, in my opinion. Also, what is more important, and you can see here, I can create and I can do with the more advanced solutions, I can actually manage all of my loans, my request, everything, again, from a single interface. Now let's talk about things that will make the user come back to your system. As I was mentioning before, we have very strong competition. We have Google Scholar, which is there. We have many other things, and many other people are, saying, you can find all the things you need for my place. I want to make sure that if you choose a discovery solution, users will actually use it. And how can we ensure that? We have to have what I call an anchor service. Like in a ship, there's an anchor. Once you put the anchor, it doesn't move. And this goes the same for discovery solution. One of the things they should offer is the option to save results. I found something that I like, I want to save it, and I want to come back to it later. Why is this so important? Let's say each one of you, you save the result. You're now forced to come back to that interface. So we make sure that the user goes back to the library discovery solution and does more actions and performs more tasks. This is why having such services is very important. Oop. You already saw the next slide, don't worry. The last component is that we have to be innovative. We have to create and we have to do new things. And as you saw in my next slide, how many people here have a Facebook account? How many people, wow, almost all of you. How many people, kids, have Facebook account? How many people with children, they have Facebook account? I assume every kid, I have a Facebook account. Everyone has a Facebook account. And I'm amazed by how much this has become part of our culture. As we were sitting during lunch yesterday, people told me that they use Facebook to even send a quick message to their family. Dinner is ready. It's faster because they're always on Facebook. This is wonderful. We need to make sure... there's a small delay. We need to make sure that the discovery solution is also part of that. By providing the option to like certain items. Maybe private people, will not like a lot of articles, will not click on the like. But today, Facebook is also being used in a whole different way. A lot of classes and professors create their own subgroup. If they can share some of the articles from your discovery solution in that group's Facebook, it will make it usable. So we should start with Facebook and we should move on to any social media that's available, even to tweet about an article. It might sound funny, but this is the way users actually work. And a lot of the users are fairly young. This is the way they grew up. You know, when I grew up, if I wanted to do something with my friends, I would go outside and play soccer. Now they grow up, they want to do something with their friends, they go on Facebook. But we have to make sure they're part of that system, because we cannot ignore it. And this is just an example. When you do like something, it does appear on your Facebook page. Also, we know that a lot of the usage today comes from, again, these nice devices. You can do anything with them. You can shop, travel. Why not search the library materials? It's very important that any discovery solution you choose for your library will also have a mobile interface. Because a lot of the users simply use that to get to materials. Even if you go into the library and you already have the station ready for you to search, you can see a lot of people do this. Where do I find the book? Because we're used to using these devices. And we see more and more usage in discovery solution coming from these kind of devices. I want to finish my presentation today with just saying that, you know, the world has evolved so much in the last 3 years. If you look 30 minutes ago, when or 35 or 45 minutes ago, when I started presenting, I talked to you about RSS, which is something that today is very old. And now I talk about Facebook. So in 3 years, the world has completely changed. Who knows what we'll need to provide in 2014 and in 2015. But it's very important for the library to be an essential and a core part of the user experience. And this is why we see a great adoption of discovery solutions around the world, because there is simply no other way. Users' expectations are completely different. If they don't find something that they're looking for in a simple, fast and easy way, they won't do things. They'll go somewhere else. And we want to make sure they will go to the library. So before we move to some questions and answers, I did want to leave you this with, you know, the 3 main components as we've discussed about. Relevance ranking, making sure the most relevant result stay at the top of the list. Providing the library with the tools to make a decision how they would like the discovery solution to look like and behave. And also providing some new materials, doing new things that are exciting and are part of the user environment. With that, I'd like to thank everyone here and open the floor for any questions in the 5 minutes we have. Thank you.
Obrigada, professor Ido. Então, vamos abrir as perguntas. Relembrando que os microfones vão passar e pode enviar por escrito também. Por favor. Uma pergunta, professor, então. A Paula Carina de Araújo, bibliotecária da Federal do Paraná, pergunta: quais são alguns exemplos de sistemas que oferecem recomendações de outros artigos ou livros para os usuários durante a busca?
It's a good question. The only system I know today that offers article recommendations as part of their discovery choice is Primo by Ex Libris, who offers this with BX, the article recommender. I know that in Summon they also provide database recommendations, which is a bit different, but I'd say the Primo Ex Libris is probably the only one who offers that service.
Rosa, PUC Campinas. Eu gostaria de saber o tempo, né, de implantação de um sistema como esse numa biblioteca que já possui um catálogo e vários outros recursos, né, de informação. Ele faz a integração de todos os conteúdos para uma busca mais rápida, e quanto tempo isso levaria para me entregar pronto para que o usuário pudesse usar?
It's a very good question. And I think it's a complex question. Why do I say it's complex? It's very easy to do implementation in even a few weeks. Taking from A to Z and providing that great discovery solutions to your users with all the content you have, with the ILS content, electronic materials, and digital. It's not something complicated. Where does it get complicated? When you start making more decisions. The more advanced discovery solutions, we should provide you with a lot of options. Do you want the facets to be in this order? What would you like to display in the brief results? Do you want to display the author? When it comes to decision, I come to learn that people don't like to make decisions, they like to think about decisions. So I would say this will usually make the implementation longer. But if you make all the decisions from the start, and if you act quickly and decisive, you should be up and running within maybe a month and a half. That if everything is good. Thank you.
Sônia Bournier, do IBICT. Eu gostaria de saber se é possível fazer a integração entre diversas instituições que possuem catálogos em formatos diferentes.
Yes, it should be, the discovery solution should be somewhat agnostic to the formats being used. We have a lot of institutions, consortiums, using a single installation of a discovery solution, and each one has their own view, but they also have a union catalog, a union view for the entire thing. So you should be able to accomplish that fairly simple.
Você se referiu, então, à questão de busca unificada em diversas instituições, possuidoras de catálogos em diferentes formatos. É uma busca unificada. Ele faz a busca unificada.
Yes, that is correct. Thank you, everyone.
Agradecer novamente, então, o professor pela grande contribuição ao nosso evento. Eu gostaria, então, de entregar o certificado, por favor, e uma lembrança simbólica do evento, agradecendo muito a contribuição, informando, então, que agora a gente tem um intervalo de 20 minutos e voltamos depois. Obrigada.
Peço só um pouquinho a atenção de todos, por gentileza. Eu tenho mais alguns recados a dar antes de sairmos para o COF. Informamos que hoje à noite teremos um jantar a partir das 8 horas no Parque Gaúcho. Os ingressos estão à disposição na secretaria do evento e informamos que ainda há ingressos, mas não muitos. Os nossos agradecimentos ao senhor Ido Pellet, à senhora Ana Gabriela e também a Valéria por suas participações. E hoje, senhoras e senhores, por gentileza, é feriado, para quem não sabe. O Rio Grande do Sul comemora o 20 de setembro. Em 20 de setembro de 1835, os farroupilhas, liderados por Bento Gonçalves, venciam o confronto da Ponte da Azenha e entravam na província de Porto Alegre. Iniciou-se a Guerra dos Farrapos, o mais duradouro conflito armado da história do Brasil, que resultou na declaração de independência do Estado do Rio Grande do Sul, dando origem à República do Piratini, que durou cerca de 10 anos. A Revolução Farroupilha é considerada uma das mais importantes passagens da história do nosso Rio Grande do Sul, um marco da formação social e política do nosso Estado. É a partir dela que se estabelece toda a identidade do povo gaúcho, com suas tradições e seus ideais de liberdade e igualdade. Hoje, a cultura gaúcha é reverenciada não só no Estado, mas no país e no mundo, através dos milhares de CTGs, Centro de Cultura Gaúcha, espalhadas por todos os cantos. E a cada 20 de setembro, senhoras e senhores, o gaúcho reafirma o orgulho de suas origens e o amor por sua terra. É por isso que eu peço uma salva de palmas ao povo gaúcho. Informamos a todos que as sessões temáticas da tarde, que têm seu início às 2 horas, terão acesso permitido somente no início de cada apresentação e não durante as apresentações, para não prejudicar os apresentadores dos trabalhos. Solicitamos a todos que preencham o formulário de avaliação do seminário, que está disponível no site do evento, no ícone Avaliação do evento. É muito importante a participação de todos nesta avaliação. Informamos também que os anais do seminário estarão disponíveis online na página do evento a partir do dia 27 deste mês. Faremos agora, então, um intervalo de 20 minutos. Obrigada.